We would be honored if you would join us.
Another episode, and once again we've got our friend Silver 5150 joining us as a guest. The first part of the episode was incredible, amazing, and I apologize, I forgot to mention in the beginning of the last episode that if it wasn't for Silver 5150, this Silvercast between Silver Conundrum and I wouldn't exist, because actually I was introduced to Silver Conundrum through Silver 5150. So really, Silver 5150 is like the godfather of this podcast. So thank you, brother.
You guys.
Seriously, if it wasn't for you, I never would have been inspired to even start my own channel. And if you wouldn't have shouted me out, I never would have met Expat, and then we never would have communicated outside of YouTube like we do. Like, this is a friendship that I hope lasts for the rest of my life.
Oh, I don't see it doing anything else but that, but I think it was just meant to be from the get-go. I really do.
Without you, though, think about this. Without your inspiration and your I don't know how to put it, man, just your charisma. Without that, this couldn't be happening right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do.
That is absolutely true. And I mean, if you haven't checked out the first part of this episode, then definitely do that, because we did talk about Silver 5150 and who he is and how he got started and everything. And it's a very, very informative and interesting discussion. And, he did discuss in there that, he's doing this partly to spread the word, about sound money. So definitely you have to, if you haven't heard that one, turn this off, come back to it, of course, but go listen to that one first and then come back to this. Now, with that said, in this part of this episode, we're going to be discussing the industrial demand drivers for precious metals in the short term, which we're probably going to define as maybe in the next 5 years, and then more so in the medium term, which will be around 10 or maybe 20 years in the future. So with that said, please note the disclaimer that Expat Stacker and Silver Conundrum are not financial advisors or experts. Investing is risky and comes with the chance that you could lose money. So talk to a licensed professional before making any decisions about what to do with your money. This video and all of the contents on our channels is for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. Recently, I was on, I don't know if you guys check out Transient Stacker on YouTube or Instagram, but I saw he put something on Instagram. He's a trucker, so he's driving all over the United States. And he was driving past a field of solar panels, and he put a caption, it's just like this endless field, and he put the caption where it's like he said something like, I don't know, 50 grams or 100 grams of silver in each one, or however much it is. I don't remember exactly, but, and he's like, so how much is all of this? And that to me is the perfect kind of image to introduce this topic, because honestly, I know that, a lot of, especially Americans are focused on mostly American news, and maybe they don't realize how much the rest of the world is already in motion. They're already shifting towards these renewable energies, and all of these things. I mean, this is just one of the industrial demand drivers, but it's already in motion. There was a recent video on the Platinum Beast channel where he talked about how California, the governor of California has, passed or signed an executive order where they're going to outlaw the sale of new, not used, but new internal combustion engine vehicles by 2035, I believe. So from that point on, all the vehicles being sold are going to be either plug-in electric vehicles or hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. So this is just one example, and then I have the example of the solar panels. But what do you see? Because I know you pay attention, Silver 5152, all these different news sources, financial news and global news sources. So what do you see, both in the United States, but also on a global scale in terms of industrial demand drivers for precious metals and silver in particular in the short term?
Okay. Yeah. I want to backtrack a little bit first. You were talking about, transient stacker, pointing out the endless fields of solar panels. I just wanted to add to that here in 2020, in 2021, it was mandated by the governorship that all homes in California that were built from this point on would be outfitted with solar panels. So any new homes from 2020 on would be outfitted with solar panels. In the last calculation I got, and I think this was from Jeff Clark from goldsilver.com, a smaller solar panel requires about 1/10 of an ounce of silver, and a larger solar panel requires, up to 1/4 ounce of silver, which doesn't sound like a lot, but silver can be spread out over a wide range. It's very malleable, this sort of thing. But like, again, the image of these endless solar panels, it tells you what kind of demand just that one industry is placing on silver. When it comes to here technologies that are going to, step up first, for example, here in the forefront as we come into these next few years, great examples like you're talking about, for example, the hybrid vehicles right now, and electric vehicles require a lot of silver, for all the circuitry and stuff they're going to be using and whatnot. So that's just only going to increase as the technology gets more advanced. Then, there are fun examples of, the usage of silver. Say, for example, in a Bugatti Chiron, which is like the supercar from Bugatti. For whatever reason, they've chosen to use 130 grams of silver in their grill, in their billeted grill, to give it a better, more lustrous look, for example. But when we talk about technologies, one of the things that I found very fascinating is, you have silver on one side that is known naturally to be antimicrobial. And if you don't believe that, just talk to the next vampire you see. And then, you have this pandemic that is pretty much having a direct effect on everyone's lives, and you can't get through a day without, either having to deal with it in some way. And so what happens when these two forces converge? Right now, I think there is a push to continue advancing what's called silver ion antimicrobial technology. So that's a silver SIA, or silver ion antimicrobial technology, and it's basically a way to incorporate silver into textile-based items, polymers, coatings that can be applied to, say, clothing or whatnot. And it's funny to me that I've heard not a single person from the World Health Organization or the CDC discuss the idea of integrating this antimicrobial silver technology into mask, which the whole purpose of wearing a mask right now is to diminish the effects of said, biohazard, entering your system. So what happens, when that becomes, a thing, and they decide they want to use that antimicrobial technology into other things, and they're doing it right now in sports clothing, just to keep down, a lot of the elements of working out and whatnot. But I think as we get more into the detailed needs medically, that silver ion antimicrobial technology is going to really just permeate the entirety of the treatment system. And I think that's going to be huge. Secondly, I want to kind of go to one of my fictional accounts where I have you, Expat Stacker. I always have you in these crazy, wild technological pursuits. I don't know if you've ever listened to these stories and stuff, but for example, we had adventure where your engine technology, which was one of these catalytic silver propulsion systems that you had basically advanced and had developed even further, using hydrogen peroxide and having silver as a catalyst, and it becomes this cold, exhaust system, and you're able to do all these great things, because now you don't really have a limit on heat restrictions and all this stuff, and this sort of thing. But it's a real technology. They use platinum and silver, to create a alloy that is an element that is really reactive to hydrogen, and it creates a propulsive type effect. and the number of things this can be applied to. Like the old book from 1982 says, "Hey, where's my jetpack?" We could see something like that coming. Probably next 5 to 10 years, but here soon we might see these propulsion type systems that are available in just regular, transportation vehicles or elements of transportation, ships, trains, planes, who knows?
Oh yeah. Well, you're talking about the face masks and stuff about using the silver in there. There's a few companies out there that actually have done that, like
Oh,
TFS.
okay. Mhm.
It's the futon shop, and what they do is they actually have a layer of copper not copper. They have some with copper and some with silver, and they're real fine mesh, and they're malleable and they're pliable, so they don't even feel like they're there. And you're right, you don't hear nobody talk about that again. Why wouldn't we? Because if you second you say silver could be an answer or antimicrobial to the problem that we're having, man, you're shooting silver to the moon because
Right,
everybody's
exactly.
putting in their stuff.
And and I go back to the financial rabbit holes when we talk about this. There is a particular reason or a handful of reasons why the powers that be do not want the price of silver to start heading into the stratosphere. Mainly because it would get the attention of uninterested investors. Right now the investment percentage of people that are actively into stacking precious metals, as it were, is probably less than 0.1% of the population. Which is still a lot of people, but it's nothing compared to, say, the number of people invested in, stocks, or even in bonds, or even in treasuries, or some of these other things, real estate, for example. So what happens when you take a tiny, tiny market, because silver is not a very big market at all. I mean, there may be 6 billion ounces of above ground silver available in all different forms, and that includes people that already have it and want to sell it. So the thing is, it's not a very big market if people were to train their guns on it at a $24, $25 spot price. And so the powers that be, again, they don't want anything that's going to draw attention away from their paper currencies. Now, while they're working on getting a digital currency together, it's very important that people not think too much about that, and they stay in the dollar dream, and nothing distracts them from that. But silver has the potential to really distract them from that if these other technologies bring too much attention to it.
You're right, and that's one of the things that we as stackers look at. I mean, look at Apple. Look at Apple's phones. There's how much silver in them. I think they said there's 2 or 3 grams per phone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think of how many phones that Apple has. How many products?
Right.
Look
And
at how
what's going to
many.
happen? What's going to happen with those phones when people are done with them? I mean, they might be recycled to a degree, but given the process they use, the electrolysis or whatever they have to use to apply the silver layers and stuff, are they going to try to harvest that silver after the fact? No, they're just going to recycle parts, and they're going to keep what they're going to keep, and they're going to get rid of what they're going to get rid of, and probably just melt everything down. Yeah.
That's right. And well, it's been said that Apple has enough cash, not anything else, but hard cash to buy up every single silver mine in the entire world.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's hard cash buying up every mine. So that's just to put it in perspective of how small the silver market truly is. When one company can take their cash assets and buy up every ounce of silver to be ever made again at one time.
But to do that, of course, would place them in a certain category that would not be favorable with most world governments. And that's something they really don't want. They don't want to make an enemy of the international community, say the G20, for example. So they know what the deal is, and they know what they're capable of, but they also know their consequences for doing that. Warren Buffett could do the same thing. Any of these, big billionaires, they could clean out the silver market in a day if they wanted to. And Warren Buffett actually made a play for it back in the 90s, and he was summarily reprimanded by the CFTC and had to sell back his silver for 75% profit.
I say he's the reason. They said that they took his silver, and that was the birth of what we now call the COMEX and all that other stuff. I might say the COMEX. Yeah, the COMEX.
Well, I think it was actually the birth of SLV, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, what it was. SLV. Right. That's what it was. Thank you.
Sure.
And but it's just amazes me how one man tries to do something right, and he gets beat down for it, and they basically steal it from him.
Right.
And they enslave everybody else for the rest of however long it lasts with this Ponzi scheme.
And And that's because silver is the bank killer. Silver is the bank killer. You know, as an industrial metal, it's unmatched as for the number of, things it can perform, a number of the functions it can fulfill. You know, it's only second to petroleum in its uses. As a currency, it is silver's low price point that make it a direct competitor with the dollar. And it's kind of ironic because you have silver eagles, which say $1 on them. You have the regular paper currency, the Federal Reserve note that says $1 on it. And even though they started out at the same valuation in 1913 and started heading on down the line, and of course you had Morgans and peace dollars then. But as we get down further into the years, over the last 100 years maybe, or 95 years, 105 years, we've got a 24-to-1 differential between the two that started out at the same point, which means the dollar has lost 95% of its value versus the silver dollar. And so the silver dollar, the silver eagle, or your peace dollars, or even any denomination, any country that has a 1 ounce coin out there, it is at the price point it's at a direct competitor for paper currencies. The powers that be know this, and they're doing whatever they can to keep people from thinking in that direction, because once they do that, imagine 5% of the population trying to accumulate in the market.
It would be chaos. I mean, it goes just back to what happened. What was it? 70? I can't remember if it was 71 or 74 when they revalued silver, or it's not revalued, devalued silver, changing the silver ratio to gold ratio. And again, you talking about how silver right now is 24-to-1 for a silver dollar, how that is. Imagine what it would be if they wouldn't have devalued it in the 70s. Imagine where it'd be at right now.
Well, if you adjust for inflation from 1980, when we had our $50 high, during the Hunt Brothers thing, we would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $960 an ounce for silver, and that's spot price. Something to keep in mind when you have a high spot price like that. We have our fear index, our VIX index, which is called premiums. You add that on to a silver eagle, and now you're looking at probably a $1,500 silver eagle. So if people know now that they can accumulate that kind of value by making a $25 investment or a $30 investment, as it were, with premiums, they're going to drop everything they're doing, and they're going to do that.
That's right. And why wouldn't they?
Why wouldn't they? And so I didn't mean to hog all the air here. Expat, did you want to chime in?
Sorry, brother.
I mean, you guys made a lot of good points, and I completely agree with you. I mean, we saw what happened. You're talking about the fear index. Well, in the previous episode between Silver Conundrum and I, we were talking about macroeconomics, and we were talking about how there's the food prices and things like this, and the behavior of people going in and just clearing out shelves, buying non-perishable items and stuff like rice and stuff like that. And I mean, we saw what happened earlier this year when the pandemic started with the prices of gold and silver. And you're absolutely right that the people who are connected in the global economy, however you want to refer to them, they are trying to suppress the price of silver. We saw with the recent fine, the $1 billion fine or whatever it was, $900 billion to JP Morgan. Yeah, right. And that was a story for like a day. And the only reason that came out, I mean, that should be like a scandal of like the year. And it wasn't even only silver. It was also in the bond market manipulation. But the only reason that story even came out and that they had to pay a fine was because of the FinCEN leaks,
Okay.
So I mean, otherwise, I don't even think we would have heard about that. So I think everything you guys are saying is absolutely true, and we can look at these examples to show us this. And even if there's somebody out there who is a precious metal or silver skeptic, okay, let's take a look at a different asset class. Let's look at stocks, for example. Which stocks are increasing like crazy? And there's a lot of them, of course, but which ones have been increasing the most, exponentially this year? Okay, Tesla, right? That's a big one, right? You already mentioned Apple, right? Yes, Amazon. In Korea, I can give you a few names here: LG Chem, Samsung SDI, SK Innovation, POSCO Chemical. Do you know what all of these companies have in common?
I do not.
They produce either electric vehicle batteries, or they produce some of the raw materials that go into them.
Oh my goodness. You're kidding me.
and they have been exploding in value.
Well, think about it. The rest of the world's going to electric vehicles. America is one of the few holdbacks. Like we're so controlled by the petroleum powers that they are the ones pulling the strings. The rest of the world is like what you just said, man. That battery power is where it's at.
Yeah. So and even in a country like China, I mentioned a few times, but I don't know who's people might miss the videos or whatever. So I continue to mention these things. But LG Chem is #1 in the world. They're going to actually spin off and make a new company that's only for making electric vehicle batteries. But China, they also have a huge one, CATL. Japan, Panasonic, they make electric vehicle batteries. And I mean, it's just, the point of talking about this is to show that even in other asset classes, what you guys are saying is being reiterated, is being backed up. I mean, it jives across different asset classes. So even if there's somebody who's a skeptic, right, we can just look at these other asset classes and see that this is happening. And Silver Conundrum, you're absolutely right. The rest of the world, it's in motion already. I mean, it's not a possibility or we think it's going to happen. It is happening now already,
This is true.
And I do think it's going to catch on in the United States. So, and both of you guys are in the United States. So what are you seeing? What do you expect to happen over the next 5 years with this?
I'll let you lead off, brother. Go ahead.
Sure. I think what we're going to see over the next 5 years is there's going to be an unavoidable recognition of the value of silver, and it's by extension going to be an unavoidable increase in the spot price. It's going to be one of these things that the usual suspects are not going to be able to control, because it's going to be simply based on demand. Now, where we get into the larger valuations, where we get past the $50 mark, which there is no ceiling of any kind. There's no history. There's nothing. It is completely uncharted territory. We could sail into the stratosphere from that point. What's going to cause that move into the stratosphere is going to be a depletion of the resource, talking about silver. With all of these demands being placed on it, is the mint going to stop minting coins? Well, they can't do that, because if they do, they're going to pretty much make the clarion call that we are out of silver. So they're not about to do that. They're going to continue to make coins. These industries are going to continue to grow. The technologies are going to continue to expand. The demand is going to increase as a result. And I'm saying in the next 5 years. And so, I've said this in my show. I've said as much in my show. We're going to see a day, either next year or 2022, where you're going to have entities, either retailers or other entities out there, contacting stackers to see if they're willing to part with some of their precious metals. And that's when we have the big show. That's my theory on that. So my point is that these technologies are real. They're happening right now around the globe. And in fact, nuclear technology, to an extent, requires quite a bit of silver. If you guys remember, the Manhattan Project required something like 3 billion ounces of silver. So the thing is, the demand placed on the element, on silver, is going to be what causes the breakthrough in like these $50 berries and stuff, and that could happen any day now. It really could. But the thing that's going to take us beyond that is when we hit the wall. We're going to hit a silver wall, and the U.S. Geological Survey has said as much, back in 2014, that by 2028 they really don't see how there's going to be any more new silver to mine with any relative ease, and to put into the system. So, and then by the way, that's increasing in speed, so it could be sooner.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think there's a couple of points real quick that I want to say there. One thing is, so we've already started to see some of the, cracks in the ice, if you will, with the U.S. Mint, right? They recently upped the price on their proof coins and their uncirculated coins, right? So that kind of already that's just one, indicator of like that kind of high end coins, but that also trickled down a little bit into, just the regular, commercial strikes that we all stack. Right. So,
right.
And then, I think another thing that indicates, support for what you're saying there is that we've seen some of the mining companies, even some of the larger ones, it's cheaper for them to do an M&A, to merge into one company,
Right.
in order to share their resources, their mines, because a mine is a depleting asset. Okay, once you start mining it, it just goes down from there, right? Because we all know precious metals limited, right? So it's cheaper for them to do M&A together and become one company and share their assets than to do more exploration, because they've been
Ah.
exploring for new sources, new places to do mines, and they're not finding them, and they're spending more and more and more money on trying to locate the resources, but they haven't. So it's more economical for them to merge into one company than to search for new gold and silver mines. So I mean, I think that is a support for what you're saying, and some people might hear what you say. I mean, it's a bold claim, but some people might hear what you say and say, oh, that's that's crazy talk or whatever. But like it doesn't just all happen all at once, right? It builds up over time, and so we have to look for indicators like the ones that I just pointed out, which would say lend support as a trend toward what you were just saying there. So I think that it's absolutely not just possible, but the things that we're seeing are likely. And I'm not an ideologue. I'm not the type of person who has the conclusion already in their head, and then whatever happens, I just figure out a way to make it support my existing belief. Right. I don't do that. If something is if I think something that's wrong, I'll take in new information and I will adjust my thinking on it. But I see these set of facts in this data, and I think that it absolutely supports what you were saying there. So, and then you mentioned the nuclear energy. Did that ring any bells for you, Silver?
Actually, really it did. Well, sorry. Yeah, the nuclear industry for me is what I work in. So there's actually they are producing new nuclear power plants, and they are not being put into play just yet because the technology is still relatively new. They're called micro plants. So basically a big nuclear plant is about 5 or 10 acres. Basically take a super Walmart and put 4 of them side by side. That's about the size of a power plant. Now, take a single Walmart, and that's the size of the new power plants they're talking about building with these micro reactors. And they can place these things throughout the country. Well, if they do that, you got to have silver for a lot of that. Some of those nuclear seals. So a lot of the there's BWRs and there's PWRs. It's another ball game, but there's a big difference in the way they work. PWR is a pressurizer reactor. So what happens is those pressurizers have a seal. Those seals are made out of what? Can you guess?
Silver?
Oh, look at that. Silver.
Ding, 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 ding.
They're made out of the silver. And those seals, guys, weigh about 200 pounds.
Oh, my gravy.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. I've thought about it. But they're radioactive. And what they are, so what it is, it's a steel core that's been dipped in silver several times until it's like basically, if you look at it, there's silver around it, and there's a steel core that runs right through the center of it. And so what happens is when you press down with all the PSI, that silver's so malleable, like what we talked about before, it actually forms a perfect gasket.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, man, it's beautiful the way it works.
Yeah.
But if they start building these power plants like they're talking about, and like I said, the technology just came out. I just read an article in in the Nuclear Journal. Came in, it was last week or week before last, and they're talking about how they just perfected these power plants. And here's the best part: they're a fraction of what it costs right now to build what we're building, because we're building nuclear plants all over the country for the most part. And so as the old ones get ready to be retired, they're talking about building these little micro nuclear plants because, one, they're green energy. which goes into what we're talking about.
Can I just kind of pile on that real quick? I love
Yeah.
watching the environmental, radicals struggle with this because, on one hand they're like, oh, nuclear energy is absolutely evil. We can't have it. We got to get rid of, carbon-based, fuel systems and power plants and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You want an unlimited source of green energy? Well, here it is, right? Well, no, it's nuclear because, okay, you're conflicted. I don't know what to tell you.
You're right. Well, people think though, a nuclear power plant, its carbon footprint, if I'm not mistaken, it's net zero.
Exactly.
So everybody's like, oh, but it's nuclear. It's like, yeah, it's nuclear, but if you look at how it works, it goes into everything we're talking about. The more power plants, which means the batteries, though, those electrical cars we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have a better way to charge them, because if you can't charge your batteries, well, guess what? You're sitting still. You're not moving anywhere.
This is right, and a lot of these self-righteous, environmental types. And I'm an environmentalist to a degree. I'm not preachy about it. But a lot of these people, you see them on the roads. They're driving their Priuses 85 miles an hour because of the gas mileage. What they don't realize is a lot of the places the stations they charge from, are serviced by a coal-fired plant, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like there's a meme I've seen floating around my community in the nuclear industry. It shows a guy with a smart car who's carrying around a Honda generator in the back of it, and he's charging it and he's filling it full of gas. You see the irony though, right?
It is something.
But it's
Okay.
but that's what they see.
Let me jump in here because this actually raises a very interesting point. So there are the plug-in electric vehicles, and I totally agree. You're absolutely right. When you plug those in, they're getting powered by something that's polluting the environment, right? So if people really, really care about that, they're going to have to address that. I mean, that is a dichotomy that you can't escape. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Maybe they haven't thought it through because it's new technology or, whatever. I don't know. But so there's the plug-in electric vehicles, and then there's the hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, yes.
So those do not have that problem, right? And we have right now, I kind of compare it to the way that we have, unleaded fuel powered cars, and then there's diesel powered cars, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. There are a lot of differences between the plug-in electric vehicles and the hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. Mm-hmm. But basically, I think that most people would agree that the unleaded fuel vehicles are more popular, right? On the road. So what I'm thinking is, are we going to have the same kind of competition or dichotomy or preference between the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and the plug-in electric vehicles? And because of what you guys just mentioned about how the plug-in vehicles are basically still polluting the environment, mm-hmm. and also for some other reasons, like, for example, these oil companies, right? These companies like Shell and
Chevron,
all these companies, right? Like, they have all these gas stations all over around the world. They're not going to want to just get rid of those, right? So wouldn't it make more sense for them to repurpose and re-outfit their fueling stations into hydrogen fuel cell? So, for some of these big reasons, as well as some other reasons, I personally think that the hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle is going to be the one that becomes emerged as the
dog.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about that? I mean, do you agree with that, or what are you thinking?
So, Conundrum?
If in my opinion,
yes.
If the country is going to let it happen, I don't see why it wouldn't. What stands in the way, man, is what we talked about before. The big powers, petroleum, electric. I mean, those guys control our government, whether you like it or not. Like, I think if our petroleum benefactors, so to speak, mm-hmm. cannot make a dime off of it, they're going to lobby against it because, hey, I can put my petroleum going towards a plant to make electricity to power an electric car, but that hydrogen, I'm losing money. What am I doing? Making plastic? And that's what they're probably going to look at. And I think depending on what country you live in, it depends on what you're going to get. Like in America, we drive SUVs like they're going out of style.
And pickup trucks.
That's right. And if we go to say, let's go let's go England. They drive very small vehicles over there comparatively. So it just depends on what your government's going to allow you to do and who's going to back what the government is told. And
Right.
when government's told, I mean what big pharma or big oil is telling our government they're going to let them do.
Now, I have a question.
Yeah,
Hydrogen fuel cell technology is not new, is it? It's been around for a while, right?
It's been around for a while, but they've been perfecting it for what, last 20 years?
Yeah, and I think my point is that I think there's been an active effort to kind of suppress any kind of zeal or pursuit of it by the powers that be for those exact reasons that SC mentioned. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be the real obstacle right there. If you could somehow let them share in on the credit, talking about these anti fuel cell technology people, the petroleum companies, and other types of power companies, or even like the ancillary companies that are related to the production of the internal combustion engine that would benefit from it, somehow get them in on the movement, then perhaps you would have less resistance. But I think they're so mired in their product that they're not about to step over and try to move forward with us.
There are definitely people like that. And Silver Conundrum mentioned how, they push back against it and in the government, but also they have like PR people. Absolutely. I mean, I mentioned in the beginning of this that, California by 2035, they're not going to allow the sale of unleaded, gasoline powered vehicles. And immediately there's like a statement put out by a think tank, which is, always magically sides with the fossil fuel industry, and they don't talk about anything. They don't talk about anything related to actual issue. They're like, what about freedom? What about people's freedom of a choice? And you're interrupting the free market. They're using all of these loaded words, code words, to try to make it a political issue and just divide everybody on it. But I mean, I do think that there are a lot of companies though that are starting to get on board with it, because I think that. And this kind of goes back to what you were saying just about silver as like an asset itself. The lid, I mean, they can't control it for very much longer. You know what I mean? So another company that I mentioned was LG Chem. Guess what? GM, that's their number one supplier of their electric vehicle batteries. And you mentioned Amazon. Guess what? LG Chem provides the electric batteries for their drones that work in all their warehouses.
Oh my goodness!
So there are a lot of people who are from the traditional, fossil fuel industry who are pushing against this, but there's also a lot of emerging power and money which is pushing for it as well. So I think that, like, you're right. We're going to see that this cannot be contained for very much longer.
Agreed.
I agree.
I just think one more point about like the near and medium term of the industrial demand drivers. And I actually thought this before the pandemic happened, just because there is so much, global tension. I mean, I thought about this in the beginning of 2019, at the end of 2018, that, there's going to be a lot of infrastructure projects and infrastructure spending. Countries are looked much more internally, but even more so now. I mean, yeah, we can do UBI and just give away like money to people like it's nothing, every month or whatever. But wouldn't it be better to pay them to do something productive and get the economy going? And I mean, I just think like, Silver Conundrum just talk about these kind of mini nuclear power plants and like something like that, for example, right? Like pay people to build that, right? And that's an infrastructure project. I mean, the Republicans and the Democrats both agree that we need infrastructure in the United States, but it's not just in the United States. They're all over the world. I think that infrastructure is going to be one of the things that we see emerge as a commonality across, different countries, as a way to kickstart the economy, to move towards this renewable, sustainable energy, and to, just lift people out of the suffering that they've been enduring over the past year or so.
I think you nailed it. You've nailed it. You've nailed it. Now, what's missing here? What's missing is leadership. And if we had good leadership, they would see that the timeline is actually right now. They should have actually done something like what you're talking about, Expat. They should have started that probably about 9 months ago when, we started having the repo banking crisis last year. And it looked like, that, the banks were going to start to roll over and go the way of Deutsche Bank. They were saying, okay, we can see that currencies right now are on the way out the door. So how about we do this? How about we just blow these currencies out by starting massive infrastructure projects, set up a pay system for everybody that wants to be part of it and wants to work. If they don't want to work, we've got work for you. We're going to pay you and stuff. And of course, that's going to overinflate the currencies. But while this is going on, we're getting infrastructure built. The money velocity is moving because now you have working people that are going out trying to get things that they either need or they're trying to extinguish their debt, right? And then once you blow the currencies out, it would be the equivalent of using your credit card to build yourself a house or to build yourself a tiny home anyway. And they cutting your credit card up. And basically, you've got the infrastructure in place, but the debt's no longer there because the medium in which it is denominated is dead. And this would be the perfect fit for everything. It would get the reset on the way. It would get people, back in the game. It would help them clean out their, toxic debt and give us the infrastructure, either improvements or increases that we need.
Yeah.
That should be happening right now.
It should be, but it's not. And why? Because both sides are too busy pointing the finger at each other. It's his fault, it's their fault. It's not our fault. When everybody should be looking in the mirror and pointing the finger in the mirror.
Well, political power, is a very corruptive and addicting thing. And it not only does it, corrupt those that are in that world, but it keeps them from seeing clearly. It keeps them from seeing solutions or even wanting to try to find solutions. One of the things that they tell you if you want to prolong your political career is don't solve anything. Campaign on everything, but don't solve nothing and stay there for 40 years.
Yeah.
We've seen that with too many of our politicians now. And it's not just our politicians, it's politicians around the world. World leaders do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, matter of fact, what's the definition of insanity?
I think it's doing the same thing repeatedly, even though it doesn't work.
That's pretty much it. Doing the exact same thing, expecting different results. And here we are. We elect the same people in power, and nothing's changed. So, what is the politicians wrong, or are we as a people? Are we wrong? Because we got those people out. We got those people out and put people that we want that will move us forward and get the old dinosaurs out. We'll be better off, in my opinion. And this way we get more, how do I put this? More footing on the next level of our progression as a country and as silver stackers.
Oh,
because we're talking about the nuclear power side of things. Let me explain something to you. I don't know how long if you know how long it takes to build a nuclear plant, but it takes about 10 years on average to build a nuclear plant from ground up.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the wealth the people who work on that will gain. And I don't mean just monetary. I'm talking about knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about
experience,
new housing, experiences, new people they meet. They just put a new sense of belonging in a community.
Mm-hmm.
They now have a place to build a community around. And see, everybody thinks that nuclear power is bad because it goes boom. That's not true in the United States. Right. Our reactors are not designed to do that. They don't go boom at all.
Right. But, it's up to the leaders in the education system to tell people at a very young age that's the case. And just like with finance, there are things that they leave out of the education system for an express purpose of creating unnecessary ignorance because people are easier to control that way. The thing is, we had 3 Mile Island, which was, an accident. It wasn't like a catastrophe. Chernobyl, that could be qualified as a catastrophe. But when you think about, it's like the number of planes that land safely. You never hear about what that number is, except the one that may crash in a 3-year period. You definitely hear about that in the 24-hour news cycle. You never hear about all of the nuclear power plants that have provided power and life to people over the decades and over the years, or even the different types of power plants. Because look, a lot of navies probably use more nuclear power than anyone, and that's been going on for decades.
And that's right. And that's the thing too. With the nuclear power, it brings in more precious metals. Because think about this: if I'm building a PWR style reactor, and I need a seal, I'm using silver. We use gold we actually use some gold in some of our systems.
Mhm.
It's a great electrical, what do they use it for in computers? But anyway, that's outside of my privy. But they don't let me know that kind of stuff. But the silver side, I do see, because we use it in our valves. We use it in our pressure seal valves. We use it in our pressure reactors. We use it for soldering our components. Like when our INC techs, they use silver solder to do the computer chips and the microchips and all the other stuff that they do.
Mhm.
Those things require silver. And when you're having to consume, and by the way, every 2 years, that's 200 pounds of silver
Mhm.
per reactor that gets scrapped out.
And that's just in the United States.
That's just in the United States. So if we add more of those, think of how many ounces of silver is going to be scrapped out and to never be reused again. Because
Mhm.
once it's radiated, it
Mhm.
goes to Barnwell, South Carolina, and it sits there in a field until it no longer is radioactive.
Right.
And
And it's not usable. It's not part of the system. It's gone. for
Right.
now.
It's gone. And we'll be dust by the time it's usable again.
Well, I think we made the case that silver's days are numbered being abused in the price scheme, and that if they want to try to keep it around or keep it preserved or keep it available for the future industries, they're going to have to raise the price point on it to
They are.
have its rarity recognized.
That's
Yeah.
right. 'Cause if they don't, they're in trouble.
Yep. And I think that, you made an excellent point there too about how, there's no talk about it in the education system or, in finance or anything, for kids and for adults as well. The silence is deafening. But luckily, that's what the Silvercast is for. And once again, it was an amazing, very informative, excellent, exciting, stimulating conversation. I appreciate both of you guys making the time and coming on to discuss this. And you know what? We're going to have one more really awesome, excellent conversation next week. So thanks again, guys. Everybody, we will catch you in the next one.
Everybody have a good day, night, weekend, whatever it is for you.